Tati, can you check?
I got it.
Hi, everyone. We're just
live.
Great. Tati, can you check?
I got it.
All right, everyone. Hello, hello. We're going to wait a minute or two just to get everybody who is going to be joining us right on the hour is in before we get started. And welcome.
And hello to our repeaters. It's nice to see your faces again. And hello to some people I haven't seen. This is great.
For those of you who are here, there's a poll that you can fill out. And you should be able to access it through Zoom. It has a few questions about Parable of the Talents. So feel free to answer the questions if you want to. Some of the questions are intended to be provocative because that's how we roll in this house. So enjoy them. It's obviously not mandatory, but.
Wait, can I not vote? Hello?
You should be able to vote. Can you not vote?
Can I? Maybe it's because I'm a host.
No.
Can you all vote? I'm not a host. I am a host, but that shouldn't be it. Can you all vote?
People are
not okay. Okay, great. That's totally fine. I can give my answers later.
Oh, it's not giving you the option to vote?
No. And that's fine.
No, it's not, because everybody should have the option to vote. So hold on one second.
No, because we have votes happening. It's totally fine. It's totally
okay. Fine. People are voting.
Yes. And
okay.
It's totally fine. This is how we're gonna work this.
All right. So we'll wait right at 1:05. And if you want to participate in the poll, please feel free to. You're welcome, Elizabeth. Thanks for your note. And Donna, thank you as well. Tommy, can you share the welcome screen, please? Thank you. Okay, Tati, are you good to go?
Yes, I needed to first unmute and then let's go.
Okay, thanks for the reminder, Tommy. All right, we're going to keep the poll up for a little bit. All right, everyone, welcome to the Octavia E. Butler slow read, especially after our hiatus in May. It's lovely to see everyone. I'll introduce myself because I know there are a few people who haven't been here before. My name is Njeri Damali Sojourner Campbell. I'm the founder and one of the co-hosts of the Octavia E. Butler Slow Read. And with me are Tati and Tommy. So Tati, do you want to introduce yourself?
Hi, I am Tati, musical Tatiana. I am also I feel wrong saying founder because Njeri literally asked, so I feel wrong saying co-founder, but I am a participant who has been excited about this whole slow read situation.
And Tommy is going to be assisting us today with tech. And Tommy is also my handsome wife. So thanks for being here. All right. I'm going to keep on letting people in. All right, if you can go to the next slide, Tommy. Tati.
All right, and we will start today as we have started every other slow read discussion with our dedication to the wonderful and brilliant Octavia Estelle Butler. We will start with our dedication. You wrote for freedom, yours and ours. We honor this when we read slowly, luxuriously, and collectively, exactly as you had imagined. We are your legacy.
And the next slide.
All right, we will, is this me? Yeah. Okay. I was like, wait, let me double check. All right, we've already started with our welcome and dedication, which was done by Njeri and myself. Next, we will have the group agreement that will be read. And then from there, we will go into our book chat. Njeri and I will share our thoughts on Parable of the Talents. And from that point, we will break out into our discussions. We will have 2 breakout rooms. One will be broadcast live on the YouTube channel ONYX Pages. If you have a specific request not to be included in the YouTube breakout room because you will be on camera, you don't have to have your cam on. If you choose not to, that's totally fine. But if you don't want to be live on YouTube, you can send either myself or Njeri a private message via the chat, and we will make note of that. And then from there, we will have our group engagement. We'll go into a sound circle and we will take a group selfie with our books, however you chose to take in this medium, or excuse me, however you chose to take in this book, whichever medium you use. That's the proper way to say that. And then we will end with our announcements.
And a special hi to everyone who is participating over on YouTube. Please, you can communicate with us in the chat. Tati will be watching the chat. I'll try to do that as well. And so that's also another way to engage with us. And I see that some folks have left comments in the chat. By the time we get to the group discussion, there might be a lot of comments. So just make sure that you are reaching out to Tomi just to let her know that you don't want to be in the main room, and fix that as we go along. All right. What's funny? Oh my
Toby said, let me take my face off the screen.
All right. Okay. And if we can go to the next one, please. All right. Do you want to go ahead with the group agreement?
Oh, I thought it was you. Okay.
I can do it.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
So we'll begin with a quote from Octavia E. Butler from Parable of the Sower. All that you touch, you change. All that you change changes you. When we first started the slow read, we thought that this was an appropriate quote to use for a group agreement, because every time we come together, we are creating space to talk about her work, and we want to do that purposefully. And so we have a number of agreements that we ask you to consider and to agree with as we move forward. The first is to center the voices of people who are Black, Indigenous, or people of color in this space. Octavia E. Butler was a Black woman who wrote science fiction at a time where Black women were not invited into the canon. We recognize her now as central to canon, and our slow read is designed to engage all readers, but also to center the voices who have traditionally been left out of these discussions in literary culture and science fiction. Speak mindfully, so please share space respectfully and mindfully, not only in the chats, but also when we get together in the groups, and also how you participate over YouTube. Hatred will not be tolerated, so propagators of racism, transphobia, and other forms of hatred will be removed and not be invited back. And also share responsibly. We welcome you using social media to share your experiences today with others. So feel free to do that. But if you are going to be quoting somebody, or if you want to share a screenshot, please ask permission first. And of course, as Tati mentioned, this is live streamed right now on YouTube. So people who are watching are able to participate over YouTube, and they'll be able to see you. And if you've got a name on your Zoom login, people will be able to see that as well. So feel free to rename yourself if you don't want your name to be used. You can go to the next slide, Tommy.
All right, and then, oh, is this me? I don't know. A few quick things before we begin. Get your book ready. If you don't already have it, we'll be taking a selfie later. Make sure also that you have flagged a short excerpt. We're asking for 1 to 4, 5 sentences that can be used as an excerpt during the sound spoiler. Keep in mind that this is a discussion of Parable of the Talents. So there will be spoilers. We will be discussing details of the book. So if you have not read the book and don't want to be spoiled, you're a little bit behind, but that's totally fine. Please, after, you can at any point choose to mute or depart if you don't want spoilers, but we will be having an open spoilery discussion. And then again, if you notice something, say something. If you see someone who has said something that goes against our agreements or that is harmful or hurtful to you, again, private chat to myself or in Jerry, and we will take care of it.
We can go to the next one, please. We are currently reading Parable of the Sower and Parable of the Talents, the Earthseed duology. A multiple Hugo and Nebula Award winner. It's a powerful saga of survival and destiny in a near future dystopian America, which some have said we have reached. We will definitely talk about that today. One of the world's most respected authors of science fiction, Octavia E. Butler, imagines an apocalyptic near future Earth where a remarkable young woman discovers that her destiny calls her to try and change the world around her. OEB's brilliant 2-volume Earthseed saga offers a startling vision of an all too possible tomorrow, maybe today, some would say, in which walls offer no protection from a civilization gone mad. And this is the Earthseed series. So this is a brief synopsis of Parable of the Talents. This Nebula Award-winning sequel to Parable of the Sower, which we discussed back in March, continues the story of Lauren Oya Olamina in socially and economically depressed California in the 2030s. Convinced that her community should colonize the stars, Lauren and her followers make preparations. But the collapse of society and rise of fanatics result in Lauren's followers being enslaved and her daughter stolen from her. Now Lauren must fight back to save the new world order. So this, for those of you who are new, is where Tati and I share for a few minutes our individual thoughts about the book. Tati, do you want to go? Could you please go first?
Sure. Hi, is this where we reduce the presentation?
Yeah, I'm gonna stop screen sharing.
Okay, cool. I didn't know. Okay, cool.
Thank you for that.
No problem. So, where to start with this? This is, again, my second time reading Parable of the Talents. And the first time that I read it physically, and Lauren's kid could kiss my ass. That's like the easiest and quickest way, quick and dirty for me to say. I was so upset that the character of Lauren could end up having a child who disliked her so. This time when I read it via audiobook, and I'm a little perturbed with myself because I had more understanding of Larkin / Asha that I didn't necessarily want to have. I had no desire to have that. Those of you who have watched my YouTube videos for a while, you all know that I am Team Lauren. Lauren is my shero. But even with the understanding that I had in allowing Larkin to be a character, the character that she is, um, the alliances that Larkin chooses to make as she learns the truth about how she got to where she is and the secrets that were withheld from her, not just by those who held her captive without her knowing she was captive, but also her uncle, and her ability to uh, be okay with them and still not be okay with her mother. The strain of the mother-daughter relationship really struck me, and Asha, having read Lauren's journals and knowing how Lauren felt, knowing how her father felt prior to her birth, knowing how the search for her went on afterwards, and still not being able to make that reconciliation. That was a problem for me because reconciliation's a big thing in my mind and in my heart. So that was a problem for me. But also, I looked a lot more at the importance and put how community is put forth. One of the things in the that just really popped in my head to sum up some of what I was thinking is the part in the statement that in Jerry read earlier, where it says that Lauren and her followers, Earthseed, Acorn, they're making preparations for their destiny to be among the stars, and what that actually meant. How we get to the end of the novel where Lauren and Asha actually meet up, and there's still the building and the preparation of that. So and everything that was learned while they were in Earthseed, how to take care of the land, how to take care of each other, how to pull together resources and use those resources for the community. That work was still going on. And as much as like Octavia E. Butler would have loved to see this duology continue and for us to get to the stars, as much as Lauren wanted that in the story, it's not something that happened within her lifetime. And we don't know if it happened as the story went on, because this is all that we get. But I felt that and still feel the strength in community and the strength of Lauren to pick up and go when tragedy comes, when things that are unexpected happens. She still has to pick up and go. And I have to say, one of the most poignant moments for me in the story is after they're able to leave Acorn, which has been bastardized into Camp Christian, and they emotionally have a moment where they can take stock of all that they have lost. And how, even in that moment, while how nonsensical some of the unions and community, the ways that they came together in community happened, each of the residents found a partner to help them work through that. And I think that for me is the takeaway from this duology, that regardless of what you're dealing with or you're going through, it's not something that you can do alone. Regardless of your makeup, regardless of your body build, your gender, your faith base, it's not something that you can do alone. You need a partner with you. And Lauren consistently worked to make sure that she had a partner, and when she could have a community, she had a community. And that is something that I think Asha was significantly missing and didn't realize that she was missing as she was growing up. And I think that also created some of the tension, because Asha won't find people who are in relationship with Lauren who don't like Lauren. Yet Asha doesn't like Lauren, except for Marco, and fuck him. But yeah, those are those are my thoughts. Josh, I see your face. Those
I,
are my thoughts.
we embrace profanity here on the Octavia Butler Slow Read. That is the best way to engage her work. Thank you very much. And please feel free to engage profanity yourself. So thank you. For me, this time reading the Parable of the Talents, I really focused on the voice of Larkin / Asha Verde. I focused on her because in the past, I didn't really get her tone as much as I did when I actually listened to her. There's a lot of sarcasm, mistrust. Her voice was a lot higher on the recording than it was in my mind. So she really did sound like a sneering, at times misguided young femme. And that wasn't the Larkin that I had created the first several times I read this story. And it really helped me to accept that Larkin did not turn out to be and would never be what Lauren had hoped and what Lauren and Bankole had hoped. And it got me thinking about how much the systems of oppression work to divide families, and how successful they can be just one generation, really changing the relationship between mother and daughter, person and community. And I found myself feeling very sad. This was a sad read for me. I think there's a lot of separation and despair in Parable of the Talents. I think even more intimate despair than in Parable of the Sower for me. And feel free to write your own thoughts as we're talking in the chat and also on YouTube. We'll read them out. I felt really sad in Parable of the Sower because, Robledo gets burned, and then there's this long trek to Bankole's land, and then it's really hard putting everything together, and we don't know where everything's going to go, and everything's burning, right? And a lot of people describe Parable of the Talents as more of a building story, whereas Parable of the Sower was a destruction story. For me, in Parable of the Talents, it felt to me like everything was in place for Larkin and Lauren to connect sooner, to be reunited. Marcus could have done that, and he knew how important it was, not only for Lauren, but also for his father and for his mother, Lauren's stepmother, and for Acorn and for community. He knew how important it was, and he didn't do it, right? And that that for me was a betrayal so intimate that it was actually one of the most heartbreaking betrayals in the entire duology for me, was what Marcus did to Lauren Olamina. And for me, that was commentary on patriarchy, on homophobia, because one of the reasons why Marcus held on to Larkin was because he couldn't have children, or he didn't have children. And why didn't he have children? He didn't have children. I mean, it is revealed that he doesn't say that he's a gay man, but he confesses to Larkin that he loves men and would be with a man, but couldn't because he was a prominent member of the church and it was against the religion. So he was unpartnered and relatedly not a parent. So arguably it was homophobia and patriarchy combined that created the conditions for him to betray his sister and Earthseed, that took him in, right? And that is very difficult for me. And this time reading Parable of the Talents, I think that hit home for me in a way that it's never hit home before. The other thing that really touched me reading Parable of the Talents, because one of the things that we've been trying to do, and I think it's subtly been happening in the Octavia E. Butler slow read, is looking at the meta story, right? Looking at the overarching story that Octavia E. Butler has told us through all of her writing as we've read more and more. And so I noticed that in Parable of the Talents, there's everyday there's slavery. In 2032, there's slavery. In Kindred, we're presented with the institution of chattel slavery as something of the past that Dana is only able to feel in her real life because of time travel. But in the parables, this is a reinstitutionalization of slavery in a way that is different, obviously, from chattel slavery. But it's just like, it's really intense. It's a different experience, right? So I was thinking about the ways in which Parable of the Talents speaks back to kindred. And then, of course, when Lauren Olamina starts thinking about what life, what humanity is going to evolve to, and what it will mean when we encounter the stars, and when we eventually get to Mars, which, you know, for those of you who know, the space station on Mars is named after Octavia E. Butler. So that destiny has been fulfilled. That, you know, you can't think about what Lauren is talking about and not think about the Owen Collie, and not think about how she also explored this relationship between humans and aliens. And it's almost like the Earthseed duology helps us kind of see what might have preceded the Lilith's brood, right? Or the Xenogenesis series in a way. So I've just been thinking about how all of her stories seem to be asking us the same question in different ways. What will you do with what you've been given? What are we to do with what we have? And there's no happy ending. And if there is no ending, as Lauren believes in Earthseed, if there's no like religious somewhere else, right? What are we making now, right? Or even if there is, what are we making now? Is this question that I'm left with after reading Parable of the Talents. So, and also I really liked the tech. I liked the dream masks. I liked seeing how she envisioned 2032, which and 2023, like years that we're in right now. And I like thinking about what's similar and different about the world. There was one point in the book where she talks about where Lauren describes the families that are buying tickets to Mars. And I was thinking about all of, like, there are families right now buying generational tickets for tour, like space tourism. And it's just really interesting, which is one of the reasons why I asked in the poll, you know, was she predicting the future, or was she just really clear about what was happening in the present and just logically extrapolated outwards, right? So there's so much to talk about. I'm going to end my thoughts here, but I'm going to read some of the comments that we have. So Tati, if there's any comments in the YouTube chat that you want to read, please do. And then I'll just read some of the stuff that we've heard here. So MJ says, I think that's where I am. I haven't accepted how Asha turned out. It's so hard to accept that she hates her mother. And I wonder, like, does she hate her mother, or is it like this complex distrust that's so deeply seated, deeply rooted, right? Because it seemed to me, and maybe this is something I just saw in her voice, that she really tried to empathize, but after all of these years of indoctrination, like how would she have come back, you know?
I question, I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
Sorry. I
No,
question whether or not she tried to empathize. I think, and I'm saying this as someone who, for those of you who don't know, has a faith base. I am Christian. I am Baptist. And so what are the things that we regurgitate? And I've done a lot of work to stem what I regurgitate and to think about the thoughts and the ideas that I had. And I was really lucky growing up in my, in my community, to not have a lot of the assumptions and ignorance that some still hold on to. But what space do we make when we are challenged? What space do we make for anything other than hate if we're not trying to honestly understand? And I think that she was not willing to understand Lauren, because she was so willing to understand Mark. And I don't think that she can offer, I don't think it's her seeing like not being able to reconcile or even attempting to reconcile. I think she placed just like the others who are in CA. I don't even like the fucking name of the group. The others who are in CA, I think she's just taken that and knowing that there are problems with it, just like Mark knew that there are problems with it, not being willing to make a place or space to be unable to understand. When she goes to see Lauren, as soon as Lauren gets angry about her, the way that she talks about Mark, Lauren isn't willing to leave, but she's willing to get up and go just because you said something about the uncle who's lied to me for the last however many years I've known him. So I do think I think that it's ignorant hate, but I do think that it's hate. I don't think it's just not. I don't think it's just disliking.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Sorry.
There's nothing to be sorry about. So I'm just looking at some of the comments from YouTube.
Yeah, I was gonna share Alicia's comments. Yeah. Alicia, who's Pretty Burnout Reader in the YouTube chat, said the first time that she read this, she was sympathetic to Larkin, and she agreed with your statement of Larkin feeling whiny. That Larkin was very whiny in this book, and she also had thoughts and issues. She had felt differently about Bancole and Marcos, and I asked her not to break my heart regarding Bancole because I love him. But she did. She said that he seemed more like a grumpy old man, which he was, and that he kept making statements and pointing out Lauren's naivete, which he did. And so we agree. That's the important thing. We agree.
Gotcha. I'm going to share the results from the poll. Right after that, we have a decision to make about how we are going to split up to have our discussion given our numbers today. So our poll results are now shared. I think you should be able to see them on your screen, but I'll just read them out. So the first question, Parable of the Talents features excerpts from the books of several characters. These books act as different narrative voices. Which perspective did you trust the most? It was a tie. 43% of the group said they had no preference, and another 43% said Lauren Oya Olamina, and one person said Bancole.
And I'm wondering if because I thought I couldn't vote, maybe that was me, because that's what I would have clicked. That's what I would have clicked. But thank you, whoever the one person is.
Number 2, many describe OEB's Earthseed duology as prescient. She rejected this characterization, arguing that anyone who was paying attention could see where the world is headed. She wasn't a prophet. Sorry for the misspelling there. She also wasn't a prophet. She should have made more. She was simply observant. What do you think? 57% said she predicted the future, although she may not have known it at the time. 43% said she did not predict the future. She was simply unflinchingly honest about the present and its probable outcomes. And no one said this wasn't the right question. For number 3, little is discussed about queerness in Octavia Butler's writing. However, in Parable of the Talents, Butler explores queer attraction and gender identity. What are your views about her approach? 71% of you said, I need to think more about this. 14% said, I found it liberating. Queerness and gender identity evolve, and they did during the story. And 14% said, I wanted more. Butler should have and could have made a greater space for queer and trans characters. And then finally, the Earthseed duology was intended to be a trilogy, ending with the Parable of the Trickster. Unfinished parts of this manuscript are in her archives at the Huntington. Do you think they should be shared and read? 57% said, yes, I want more. 43% said, this is a big question, I'm not sure. 14% said, no, they were not completed. And 14% said, no, but I would be interested in knowing the premise of the story. Perhaps it might inspire more creative work. So thank you very much for participating in the poll. And Tati, I'm not sure if there's anything in the YouTube chat in response to that, but Josh's comment is, you don't have to be psychic to predict the future. She predicted the future by deduction. Yeah, and I think she actually said that in one of her interviews. She's like, it's all you need to do is look around and deduce. It's
Yeah, I think that's actually in one of the questions that's asked in the back. I don't know who else has this copy, which I don't care for, but this was one that would have been fine to highlight up without me having a conniption. But there are discussion questions in an interview that she did, and I think that's something that she said. One of the things she said in those discussion questions and answering that it really wasn't her attempt at being predictive or an oracle. It was this is what we see.
Yeah. And I also think that she also said that I think she found it very problematic that people would want to add like an out there kind of magic to what she was doing. I think she felt like that was displacing responsibility for the decisions that we're all making right now by making it seem like she had some sort of superpower. Because if she had a superpower and she was alone in that, then that means that we actually who are reading and who are making decisions that are bringing this world forward, we are, we're just doing it and not responsible. We're not accountable, right? So she did see that as a way of kind of passing the buck, which I think is also shows up in a lot of her characters, more so in Lilith than I think in Parable of the Sower. So please keep looking at the chats in YouTube and also in the Zoom. So as I mentioned, we have a decision to make. We have a beautifully intimate group of readers today. Typically what we do is we break out into breakout groups, and we have a smaller conversation. Given the numbers today, one option is for us to release everybody's microphones and we can all chat together, which would be the first time that we would have done that. And I think that Tati raised it. I think that would be a really great idea. I do know that one person said that they didn't want to be on YouTube, but that person is no longer here. So no one else has indicated that they don't want to be live. So I just want to check if you are uncomfortable. So this is negative option billing. If you are not comfortable participating in a large group discussion, just let us know. And that includes with your camera off. Because if you're comfortable with a large group discussion, which I think for the purposes of the replay would be really great, we don't always have this opportunity to just meet as a big group, just let us know in the chat. You can send the message to me personally or to everyone. I'll give you a few seconds to do that. And then if I don't get any messages saying that you don't want to participate in a large group, then we'll just open it up and have the discussion together, which would be a lot of fun. Okay, I have not seen, and what did you say?
I said, I don't see anything, and I don't see anybody who I can see looking like they're typing. So
yeah. So I think we're gonna, for the first time in Octavia E. Butler Slow Read history, we are gonna be communicating together as a large group. All right, so let me, okay. And Tomi, since your responsibility was breaking us into groups, you're welcome to do what you gotta do or stay or chat, because we're not gonna break into groups, so thank you. Just so that you know.
Thank you, Tomi. Love you.
All right. Okay. So we are going to spend the next 30 or so minutes having a conversation about the book together. And then Tati and I will sort of tag team it. We've talked a lot, so this is your opportunity. I'm just going to give everybody the opportunity to unmute themselves. We weren't sure if we were going to get Zoom bombed today. So feel free to, I like to start, I don't know how you start, Tati, when you have your own group, but typically what I ask is, does anybody have anything that they need to get off their chest right now before we even get into anything? Did you come here because you needed to say something or ask something? Go ahead.
That's how I start. That's how I start. I typically start with saying, I have talked a lot. What do y'all have to say?
Go ahead, MJ.
I cried more than when I read Clay's arc. And I cried a lot when I read Clay's arc. I just cried so much. The whole thing was just, oh God, it was just heartbreaking. But it's one of those books where I finished it and then I was like, I need to plan when I'm going to read that again already. Because I feel it, that there's so much I haven't even touched on in my mind. But it made me cry so much. It was very moving.
I appreciate you sharing that with us. She put that in the chat. Double checking for now. She put that in the chat earlier, and I was like, I could see it, and I was like, I so appreciate your willingness just to share that. So thank you. Anyone else? One of the participants on YouTube, Olivia, shares that she is a couple of chapters short from finishing, which means like she's this close to the end. But she knew she needed to be here for the discussion. So thank you, Olivia, for joining in with us. And by all means, please feel free. Any of you, there are 16 people, there are 14 minus Jerry and myself. 13 maybe if Tommy's in there, who are in this YouTube chat. We are seeing your comments. So please continue to comment. We will share them and we will include them in the discussion. Anyone else? We did a lot of, there's a lot that's shared just as in Parable of the Sower of Lauren's thoughts. But for the first time, we actually get to hear from Bankole, even though he was reticent in doing so because that wasn't his thing. How did you feel when reading, or what did you think in reading to hear or read Bankole's voice? I don't know about y'all. I hear voices in my head. So Bankole has a very distinct voice in my head that's probably formed in love. But how did you all feel? I adored it. Just to be able to not get him through Lauren, to get him directly. How impactful was that for you all? I see people thinking.
I'd love to give my thoughts about that. I really appreciated the way that Bankole struggled with his own maybe generational views. I mean, he was 57 and she was 18 when they got together. And so there's a bunch of generations between them, even in the way that he spoke to her, calling her girl, giving her directions, ordering her not to leave, wanting her to leave Acorn and to leave Earthseed. And it was really helpful to see the struggle. Like, I think that Butler complicated Bankole for us. We've seen lots of characters in her books of like patriarchal men who just tell women what to do. And here we have a doctor, a carer, a man who falls in love with, fathers a child with a child, and then tries to figure out in this world how to love her with like freely. And I think in Parable of the Sower, where we get to see him through Lauren's eyes, we don't get to see the complexity of that, although she does describe in some circumstances where she sees him hold back his anger or hold back an order or something like that, but you never can be sure if that's in his head alone. But I think it was interesting because you can see that he was kind of convinced about certain elements of Earthseed. And interestingly, not that you asked, but so was Larkin, right? Like, even though Larkin, didn't trust, didn't know her mother, what she did with the dream masks and the scenarios that she built and creating like alternative worlds where people could see themselves and engage in narratives outside of what Christian America designed for them, in her own way, finding her voice through singing and wanting to connect with people. Like, she kind of adopted some, not all and not most and not a lot, but some elements of Earthseed, and you could see that as well. But to Bankole, yeah, you could see this complexity. What did others think?
I like Bankole as a character, but I don't think I like the relationship between him and Lauren. I think it's like he's not necessarily like harmful to her, but he tries to control her and just trying to tell her what to do and when to do it. We are going to leave Acorn, and I really didn't like that. I liked how she was her own woman and she kind of like pushed back and was like, well, no, Acorn is what I've built and I want to stay here and I'm going to stay here. But I do recognize that he wanted her to leave because of the dangers of the rumors that he was hearing of Christian America. And I can't remember their name, but the other people up the way who sold marijuana, their house or their property got attacked and burned down and destroyed. And so I think so, yes, Dovetree. And so Bankole was worried the same thing was going to happen to Acorn. So like when you think about it, okay, it makes sense that he wanted her to leave. But at the same time, it wasn't just leaving Acorn that he was kind of trying to tell her what to do about. He was kind of trying to always tell her what to do. And I didn't really like that. But that, it makes, like you were saying, he is way older than she is. And so it's just he's a product of his own time where the patriarchy was, we still have the patriarchy now, but it was a different time where he felt confident as a man to order women around. So because he's older and that's what he did, he feels comfortable doing that with her. I didn't like that very much.
Yeah, to piggyback off of you, MJ, Olivia in the YouTube chat is sharing that Bankole reminds her of her dad, who's white. He's 67, she's 26. And because he will get on his soapbox about how he's seen various social and political issues spiral and then improve and then spiral again. So that's literally on the same line of what you were sharing, MJ, and also what Lauren's father said in book one. It's the exact same thing. Oh, okay. My mind just broke a little bit. And so she said her dad talking about recent history reminds her of Bankole's observations and how the world got to where it is. So it's like it's that spiral and then that improvement, but it's an improvement from the spiral. It's not an improvement from where we were before the spiral. So it's like we lose focus of where we were attempting to get to before the spiral happened. And then we can't even get back to, like, everybody's like, let's get back to the normal. Our normal has shifted because our normal is now fixing the spiral, not fixing the problems that were an issue before the spiral happened. And I think that's along the lines of what Lauren and what she wanted to change with Earthly, to like develop something that will grow through the spiral.
Mm-hmm.
And Alicia asked, I had put a question in the chat. We're on the same page. I'm appreciating this. We're on the same page. I had put a question in the Zoom chat to ponder and possibly share. What about Bankole's insisting that they leave Acorn, and what are your thoughts? And Alicia has shared in the YouTube chat, would they have been safer if they left Acorn? And she says she's not convinced that they would have been, because the issues were not just like, they were safe in Dovetree until they weren't. So it's like, how long until you're not safe? So if anyone has anything to share on any of this, is also why when we come back together, I never have, well, how did your thing go? How did your group go? As opposed to, just saying it was great, it was amazing, because there are so many thoughts. Like, my mind literally broke mid reading things. But yeah, what are anybody else have thoughts or ideas to share? Do you think they would have been safer for a longer period of time if they left Acorn?
So
If you don't unmute and share, Jennifer, go ahead, Josh.
sorry.
Jennifer is shaking her head. Like, those of you on
Yeah.
YouTube can't see it. Jennifer is shaking her head, no, and not saying a word. Go ahead, Josh. Thank you, boo.
Well, so to answer your question directly, I think it's plausible to say that there's a line of events where they left, they went to this other place. It wouldn't have been entirely safe, but their family might have been likely to be more safe, much more safe. But depending on how much Lauren would have stuck with Earthseed, if she took that opportunity to sort of wane off of it and sort of just fit in, like sort of fade into the background, then maybe there's more opportunity, less of an opportunity for her to get directly targeted, have her family destroyed. But that's a very short-term view for her and her goals in her life, to just try and keep that safe, which I guess is what Nicole is trying to do. And that wasn't really quite her goal. There's I'm getting off the point that I wanted to make, but there's an interesting thing to wonder if Lauren didn't lose her child, how fractured would that relationship have been? Because in a lot of ways, Earthseed is her child and would have always been her child. I think it's more obvious now because she lost her child, but if she hadn't, would that sort of relationship have sort of formed through time?
Jennifer, do you want to jump in?
Go ahead, Jennifer.
I believe that her daughter was the catalyst, yes, but I don't know, moving to another place would have been safer, because eventually they were going to move, because it's almost like a virus. They were spreading, and until someone stops them, they were going to continue to spread, and it was just going to take something to stop them, and that was the issue. So, and they were going to have a little time of safety, but not much, and that was the issue. And yes, her brother kind of pissed me off. So, and it was just too much. That book was heavy. Both books were heavy for me. Whether or not I'll go back and read them, I doubt it. I'm just going to be honest, because they were just really, really heavy. So, but they were good. I will say that. But both of them reminded me of what's going on now. So it's a lot to think about.
I want to get to that question, because I do think that's a really big question that we would be remiss if we weren't to ask it. But before we move on to that, I think we need to think about Lauren the way she thinks about herself. And for Lauren, safety was Earthseed, right? Safety you can't separate safety from Earthseed. And I don't think the way the town was set up, I forget what it was called, Hearthstone, Heathrow, or something like that, that to separate her from Acorn and Earthseed, and of course at that point, Acorn and Earthseed were intertwined in a way that they weren't later on in the story, would have been to amputate a part of herself. And I don't think that she would have been safe, even if she was physically safe, like even if she had, physical autonomy and safety, she would not have had psychological or emotional or spiritual safety had they moved, and had they moved at that time as well. So I don't think it would have been possible for her. And we see, even as she wrestles with that, right? Because she goes there, and I don't know, do you remember what she said when she went there with him, when she looked around?
I don't. I was actually looking for that before we
Yeah.
did. I don't.
So she comments a lot about how the community didn't really trust Bankole at first. And then they only used him because their doctor died or something. And then they had some 30-year-old doctor who they weren't even sure was a doctor. Like, he wasn't, they wanted him, the mayor wanted him. So it had a mayor, right? A male mayor. It was an upper middle class place where people were making really stupid decisions. So she commented on the fact that they built their houses on a cliff and they wouldn't move them inland until like the very last minute. And so she was very critical of the way that place was set up. And it already had a leadership structure, a patriarchal leadership structure, that was very antithetical to what she was trying to build with Earthseed. So we got clues along the way that was not somewhere that she would ever return to, even if she was physically safe. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's a good point too. I actually just, my brain is its own thing. Remembered word for word actually a clip from the show Will and Grace, where Grace has this issue where she is like flaunting her wins and celebrating her wins, and Will asks her to calm down and to not do it with their friends, and so she suppresses all of her unsportsmanship like behavior, and Will hates it and then tells her, like, what are you doing? How are you okay losing? I want to win. Like, I want to win. Do whatever you need to do to win. And Grace says, make sure that you mean this, because once baby comes out of the cage, she's not going back in. And I think that is also a little bit like Lauren was caged. She was, while they were in Dovetree, while they were in that gated community, she kept Earthseed a secret while she was building it. She made sure that she only shared it with people who showed her that they would not rat on her and get her in some kind of trouble. And even as different as her theology was from her father's, her dad did not look at her in a bad light because of that. But he did try to stem how much she talked about it. He didn't want her to share it with the community. And then it would be that same type of thing now that she's been at Acorn. She's been on the road and has been making her way on the road, and then had the freedom of living in Acorn and seeing that Acorn can exist and be a thing. And to go to, I think it was Halstead, to go to that town would be, in essence, putting her back in a cage, putting her beliefs back in a cage, to piggyback off of something that Josh put in the Zoom chat about, not being able to find people who were accepting of her ideals as they were in Acorn. To put baby in a corner.
Mm-hmm.
What struck me is that Bankole is the older of the pair and supposedly has seen more of life, more experience, but his solution is the old solution, the established town, the structure. And it's almost like he hasn't learned anything from what he's gone through, whereas Lauren has, been through similar experiences, and she has put her faith in the new community, in Acorn and then in Earthseed. So I sort of wondered about maybe him being older, his inability to let go of the old established and looking for it as being more safe, even though he's seen it destroyed around him.
Mm-hmm.
Very, very good point. Go ahead, Jerry.
I want to know, how do you think Lauren was successful? Do you think she built Earthseed? I'm thinking in particular about when everyone scattered. So first of all, okay, hold on. I don't know if anybody else caught this or if I'm just stretching, But for the first time, I realized that when they were in Camp Christian or whatever it was a storm that freed them. And Oya is the Yoruba goddess of storms. As Octavia E. Butler explains in the book. I mean, she is more than that, but that's one of the things, hurricanes in particular. And that's what actually freed them and caused the technology not to work. And I was just wondering about that, if you thought that was significant in any way. And interestingly enough, Octavia E. Butler could have written that storm in at any point, but she actually wrote the storm in right before they were going to try. Like they had built a plan to try and get to one of the teachers and to screw up the collars and fight back. And if they died trying. And then the storm comes right after they make the plan, so they don't actually need to use it. What did people feel about that particular moment? So the storm, and then how it happened in the course of the 17 months that they were at Camp Christian. Maybe somebody who hasn't spoken yet.
Yeah, and while we're thinking on that, I'm going to look up the significance of the number of 17.
Okay.
Think about that.
Jocelyn, Lisa, Alicia, Bridget, anyone in YouTube?
It just is an amazing moment in coincidence, I guess, when they're just at their breaking point and they're just willing to, we're either going to free ourselves or we're going to die trying. And then change steps in and helps them with that. This thing, yeah, that was amazing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think Oya is often referred to as a goddess of change and revolution. And then I'm just thinking about other things, right? Like that Christian saying, God works in mysterious ways, and God helps those who helps themselves. Like, and then also some of the things that she talks about in Earthseed, that like we have to look to ourselves to get it done, but we'll have help, right? But also God is change. And so, yeah. You said in the chat that 17 is significant, Tati? Yeah. Be shaped by our actions, right? Is that, she also says that. So by making the plan, do they bring about the storm? Oh my God. Okay. That's
so
cool.
Number 17. It says for the first thing that came up says number 17 Roman numerals can show up at the perfect time. They may say that it's time for new positive changes and manifestations in your life. The message of angel number 17 is let go of the past, find inner peace, unique talents, and welcome new love into your life. Just make sure you keep a positive attitude. That sound is my mind. Because what the fuck, Madam Butler? Like, I hadn't even, until you literally put emphasis on the 17 months, I thought about the storm. I thought about the mudslide or landslide, or a combination of the clusterfuck of what happened where that the cabin got buried. I thought about all of that. I hadn't thought about 17.
Yeah. And then in the parable of the talents, how many talents are they each given? Is it 5? How much are they? 5, 2, and 1?
1. Mm-hmm.
Okay.
I thought you meant the book and not the biblical story. I was getting there, but yes. And the whole importance of that parable is taking what you're given and making more from it. And that is what Lauren does with her life, not just with Earthseed, but with her life. Like, she gets to the point of Earthseed because she realizes that there are deficits for her in the things that she's hearing coming from her father's mouth in the church. And we don't get, I find it also interesting. This is going back to Parable of the Sower, but I find it interesting that we don't get her dad's sermons. So for those of us who have also grown up in church, preachers can take, I was gonna say men, but it's not just men, because chicks who preach do it too. They can take Jesus wept and make a whole 45-minute sermon off of it. And so, like, as Earthseed has changed over the time period that we experience it in these two books, how has the interpretation of the Bible changed? Because as for those of us who read, you read in light of the situation that you're dealing with. So how had interpretation of that changed? But there was something that Lauren had grown up in that was not working for her, that caused her to create Earthseed. And her entire work of Earthseed has been to take this and make it bigger.
Yeah.
To take this little bit, this little notebook that I might not even be able to take with me, these few pages that I'm given while I am enslaved, so that I can write, taking this little bit that I have and making more of it, and not keeping it to myself, but sharing it with whomever will listen, whether you agree, because Bancole didn't agree. Harry wasn't really on board. Whoever will listen, take some of this, listen to it, share it when you, and in doing that, like, she didn't even have to, the cult thing bothers me, because she didn't even have to press it upon people. It was literally, this is who we are, this is how we function. You can stay and not agree with how we are functioning, but you cannot disturb or disrupt that. And if that's where you get to, you got to go. I could keep going. Y'all, thoughts?
There's some in
Go ahead, Jennifer. Go ahead.
You said a lot, and I agree with you, because and matter of fact, because I go to church every Sunday, because I'm AME and AME Zion, and you're right. You could take Jesus wept and make a whole 45-minute sermon, and you could sit there and I mean, depending on what church you go to, you'll be shouting for a whole hour. Anyway, I digress. Back to the storm, I'd say it was hope that helped them out. I'm gonna have to call that. So with that, the Earthseed, I'd say with everything, there's progress, there's change. Even with the Bible, the more you read it, the more interpretation you can come up with also. That's why every different denomination comes up with a different interpretation. Forgive me if I'm going or stepping on toes. Like I said, I go to church too, so and I read the Bible, so I understand. And it's not that I don't believe, because I do. Sometimes if you read too much, you're gonna start questioning yourself too. But with Earthseed, it's like she's not trying to push anybody into it. All she says, here's the material, read. And if you are with us, you're with us. If not, just don't interrupt. Don't stop the music. Once you do, you got to go. And that's basically what she's saying. The storm came at a perfect time, though. Mm-hmm. It was time for them to start doing, and I think what she did, she changed the game plan, and she started talking to certain people, because you have to be careful who you talk to, because if you don't, somebody might get you. Mm-hmm. So she had to be very careful, because at that point she was looking for her daughter. So, because I forgot the little girl's name that she picked up, that she started talking to, that she started training along the way. So she started visiting.
Lynn?
Please don't, because I finished the book like a couple of months ago.
Yes.
Yeah, that's totally fine. That's totally fine.
Right.
Yeah,
so
And y'all know I'm horrible with character names, so
Yes,
you
I
are in
take
good
notes, but I don't remember. I think the last note I have is from chapter 20. So
Yeah, Lynn. So question for you before we wrap this up and move into the sound circle. What are your thoughts about the world we live in today and what she describes in Parable of the Talents, right? So when COVID-19 hit, people were saying, everybody's starting to read Octavia E. Butler. We're in a global pandemic. There's war, there's death, there's all of these things. There's a reckoning with Indigenous people and Black people and people of color around the world, white supremacy and patriarchy and all this stuff, and war and, like Trump and everything, right? People are saying Trump is Jared and everything is, and make America great again is actually in the book. People were like, oh, she was a psychic, she's a prophet. So we have to ask the question, we're the OEB slow read. That's a question that must be asked, right? Is this us, right? Is this us? Are we Earthseed, right? What can we take from this? And I'm not asking this because I suggest that we take this as a template or anything. I'm wondering how the story is landing on you, right? As we talk about it. And in the context of the slow read, this book marks the end of our reading of her series. Everything after this is either a standalone novel, Fledgling, or a collection of short stories, Bloodchild and Unexpected Stories. This is the last series. This is the last epic that we read from her. So as we move into shorter questions, and certainly in Bloodseed, did I say Bloodseed? It's not what I meant, Bloodchild. That's another word that we don't need to introduce today. But as we enter into Bloodchild and certainly Unexpected Stories, here she's asking lots of different questions in shorter form. So this is the last long form piece that we can explore, like multiple books. So what are we taking from this before we move on, if anything? Like I'm curious as to how this has touched people personally in terms of how you're living your life, if it is. And then we can move on to the sound circle.
Great. So this series is probably the most impactful series from Octavia E. Butler I've read. And I've been rereading it a lot the last couple of years because of that. And I would say it made a massive impact on how I see the world. I think we are the same world as the one depicted in the Earthseed duology, for the good and the bad. And for me, I see the Earthseed duology with all its pain as a sign of hope in what could be. In the same way that they use the storm to bring on some change, that it means there is an inevitability of change, of when there is a darkness, there will inevitably can be light if we choose to take the right steps. And I see characters like Asha as sort of an omen of, or it's not an omen, but a sort of a cautionary tale of what can be, not necessarily from indoctrination, but from what happens when a person becomes sort of resolved in their beliefs and no longer is interested in the truth, is no longer interested in believing things because they're worth believing rather than because it's just something they already believe. Which I think is the problem with Asha. Once she gets indoctrinated, she no longer wants to ask the question. She's no longer interested in changing herself, in thinking about things she's exposing herself to, or reckoning with the fact that she is what she consumes. So in that sense, it has revolutionized how I think about everything. Yes.
Thanks, Josh.
Thank you. Yeah, anyone else? We got one of the comments, there are quite a few comments on YouTube, but one of the ones that was shared by CA, I'm going to fuck up your last name and I refuse. We don't get the father's sermon, but we get her brother's sermon. And I wonder how much the brother got from the father's sermon and based his own sermons from them. And I hadn't really thought about that because I'd only thought of Marcos, formerly Marcus. That's a whole nother issue that I have with him. Regurgitating like what he heard from Christian America. and myself even questioning how much he believed, because I questioned whether or not he truly believed in what he was teaching versus I want to be a pastor like my daddy. I want to preach like my daddy. And him not being able to let go of that to even be his true self as a man who's attracted to men. Not, dogmatically holding on to what he was taught in Christian America at the detriment to himself.
Mhm. Alicia, Pretty Brown Eye Reader says, I read for the first time in 2020. It felt prophetic at that time. This time I felt it less prophetic, but more about human nature and relationships.
Okay. And CA said that they got Paul and Silas vibes from the storm liberating them from camp. That's a reference to Paul and Silas being held in prison in the Bible, and there's a huge earthquake that shakes the ground. And as a result of the earthquake, their shackles, the cells open and their shackles are broken and fall away. But they all stay, like nobody escapes. The jailer comes in the next morning and is like, oh shit, oh, my people's gonna be gone. And they were all there. So, yeah.
Interesting. That's actually really interesting because she comments, Lauren in Parable of the Sower comments on how her father, when he delivered his sermons, wanted to deliver sermons in a way that would encourage people to take action and in a really practical way. And she admired that about him, so when she does his funeral service, which isn't really a funeral service because she doesn't accept that he's passed at that point, she chooses a sermon that encourages people to prepare, right, and to get ready, which is very
which is what she was preaching before they got to the. I'm sorry.
Yes. Barbara asks everyone, did anybody read this in the 1990s or the 2000s, the early aughts? So I read this for the first time in the 90s.
I read this for the first time I think I read this for the first time in the 2000s.
Oh, wait a minute, I'm lying. No, I didn't read it in the 90s. I read it in the early 2000s.
Yeah, I read both of these in the early 2000s. I read Parable of the Sower in 2002. Because that was like my first road. I remember it very well because I read it by audiobook, and it was my first audiobook while driving on a road trip. And it's like I don't even listen to music when I drive anymore. It's a whole thing now. And then I read the second probably in the 2010s. I want to say I read the second in the 2010s. So,
what was it like to read it, when the setting was 20 or 30 years in the future? Did it seem prophetic more in the 2002s or?
It seemed, I was terrified. It seemed prophetic. It seemed possible and plausible. And I was terrified. That's literally, and that's why it took me so long to read the second book, because reading the first book sounded so plausible. Like we were looking at things that were happening during that time frame that could get us to the point of resources being scarce. Even if not your, and then the fucking Purge came out. Like, who came up with that fucking idea as a movie? But like it seemed all too plausible that we could find ourselves as a country in that situation and having this only happen on the West Coast, which is not, I live on the East Coast, and in the Southern East Coast, which, slavery is a whole thing in the mindset of people who live 200 years later. And those racist ideals and ideologies are still very prevalent in the areas that I'm in and the areas surrounding me. So transplanting that from the West Coast to the East Coast, and how difficult that would be for a tall, androgynous Black girl, because I keep wanting to say Black woman, Black girl, venturing out on her own, walking up 95 or 85 or across 81 to get to what she hopes will be a better thing. Now let's take it from someone who's changed it, from a girl who's 6'1" and androgynous to a woman who's in her 20s, short, titified from kingdom come, trying to make it in the South any which way to a better anything on her own. I was terrified.
Mm-hmm.
I was terrified. Thanks for that, Barbara. Thank you for that reminder.
Sorry.
Totally fine. Anyone else? And Jerry, you were going to say something.
I was going to transition into what we're doing next. So unless anybody else has, because we have no timer. So our discussion has gone on a little bit longer than usual. And I want to make sure that we get people to where they need to go. So I wasn't going to add anything. Is there anything else that anybody else wants to add before we move on? Okay. Tommy, are you able to share the screen again, please? Thank you very much for sharing your thoughts, people who are on the here with us on Zoom and also on YouTube. So we have discussed, there are some covers. We'll go to the next one now. All right, so if you can, I'll remove the screen share. We're going to take a screenshot now. So if you can grab your copy, that would be
however you read it. If you read it on your Kindle, if you read it using your phone, however you read it.
Yes, and if you have turned, yes, nice to see you faces. If you've turned your camera off, could you, if you don't mind, if you could turn it on just so that we can, do you want a copy, babe? Sure. If you can turn it on, that would be great. Okay, and then I'll get mine. We will take a picture. All right, 1 second. All right, we are going to take the picture in. Oops, turn it upside down. Here we go. Okay, ready? 1, 2, 3. Okay, and we're good. Thank you, everybody. All right, and Tommy, if you can share the screen again. So I think we are now at the sound circle. Tati, can you explain what this is for people who are new?
Yes, the way that the sound circle works is we will be silent. You can feel free to mute yourself and someone will start to read an excerpt. There's no announcement of what page you're on or what's happened up to that point. You just read, and when you're done reading your 3 to 5 minute excerpt, you can mute yourself. That'll be the clue to those of us who are on Zoom that you're finished, and the next person will start. So it's just reading. It doesn't have to be also in chronological order of the story in the book. It could be from any point in the book.
Thanks, Tati. All right, I will turn off the screen, put us into speaker view. All right, the sound circle is open.
But is Larkin anything like the Larkin I remember anymore? How can she be? Babies grow and change so fast. She was only 2 months old when they took her. I'm afraid I won't know her now. But if I still have the hand and the footprints, I've made copies of them so I can carry one. I've even gone to the police with my false name and told them a false story of how my daughter had been stolen from me as I walked along the highway.
I discovered that drawing was so different from everything else I did that it relaxed me. And at the same time, it roused me to a new alertness, a new kind of alertness. I've begun to perceive color and texture, line and shape, light and shadow with new intensity. I go into these focused, trance-like states and draw really terrible stuff. My friends laugh at the drawings, but they tell me they're getting better, getting recognizable.
Each denomination seemed to think that it had the truth and the only truth, and its people were going to bliss in heaven while everyone else went to eternal torment in hell.
We burned Acorn. No, we burned Camp Christian. We burned Camp Christian so that it couldn't be used as Camp Christian anymore. If Christian America still wants the land it stole from us, it will have some serious rebuilding to do.
Choose your leaders with wisdom and forethought, to be led by cowardice, to be controlled by all that coward fears. To be led by a fool is to be led by the opportunist to control the fool. To be led by a thief is to offer up your most precious treasures to be stolen. To be led by a liar is to ask to be told lies. To be led by a tyrant is to sell yourself and those you love into slavery.
We need to become the adult species that the destiny can help us become. If we're to be anything other than smooth dinosaurs who evolve, specialize, and die, we need the stars. That's why we need the destiny of Earth's seed. That's why the destiny of Earth's seed is to take root among the stars. I know you don't want to hear verses right now, but that one is a major key to us, to human beings, I mean. When we have no difficult long-term purpose to strive toward, we fight each other, we destroy ourselves. We have these chaotic, apocalyptic periods of murderous craziness.
I want to get up and just run away from everything, but there isn't any way. I have to write. There's nothing familiar left to me but the writing. God has changed. I hate God. I have to write.
We can choose. We can go on building and destroying until we either destroy ourselves or destroy the ability of our world to sustain us.
Larkin, Farrell, Ifa, Olamina, Bankole. We, your people, welcome you.
We go on having stupid wars that we justify and get passionate about, but in the end, all they do is kill huge numbers of people, maim others, impoverish still more, spread disease and hunger, and set the stage for the next war. And when we look at all of that in history, we just shrug our shoulders and say, well, that's the way things are. That's the way things always have been.
In small communities, she believed, people are more accountable to one another. Serious behavior is harder to get away with, harder even to begin when everyone who sees you knows who you are, where you live, who your family is, and whether you have any business doing what you're doing.
There are times when I wish I believed in hell, other than the hells we make for one another, I mean.
Politicians, on the other hand, are short-term thinkers, opportunists, sometimes with consciences. but opportunists nevertheless. Business people are hungry for profit, short and long term. The truth is, preparing for interstellar travel and then sending out ships filled with colonists is bound to be a job so long, thankless, expensive, and difficult that I suspect that only a religion could do it.
We caused the problem. Then we sat and watched as they grew into crises. I've heard people deny this, but I was born in 19. I thought that was a sound circle share. My apologies.
And I'm finding more and more people who have the leisure not to worry about the nasty downward slide that the country's been on. In the 2020s, when these people were sick, starving, or trying to keep warm, they had no time or energy to look beyond their own desperate situations. Now, though, as they're more able to meet their own immediate needs, they begin to look around, feel satisfied with the slow pace of change, and with Jarrett, who, with his war and his crusaders, have slowed it even more. I suppose it would have been different if we'd won the war.
Beware. Ignorance protects itself. Ignorance promotes suspicion. Suspicion engenders fear. Fear quails. Irrational and blind or fear looms. Defiant and closed. Blind, closed, suspicious, afraid. Ignorance protects itself, and protected, ignorance grows.
The Alexanders were like a combination of believer and mercenary. The Alexanders wanted me to believe, and even if they did not love me, at least they took care of me. By the time I was old enough for school, Christian Academy School, of course, I had learned to be quiet and keep out of their way. When I succeeded at this, Case and Madison would reward me by letting me alone. Case took a break from telling me how much inferior I was to Kamaria. Madison took a break from trying to get his sweaty hands under my dress.
Beware, all too often we say what we hear others say. We think what we're told that we think. We see what we're permitted to see. Worse, we see what we're told we see. Repetition and pride are the keys to this. To hear and to see even an obvious lie again and again and again, maybe to say it almost by reflex, then to defend it because we've said it, and at last to embrace it because we've defended it, and because we cannot admit that we've embraced and defended an obvious lie. Thus, without thought, without intent, we make mere echoes of ourselves, and we say what we hear others say.
Now I watch as, one by one, the ships lift their cargoes from the earth. I feel alone with my thoughts until I reach out to hug each of my friends and look into their loved faces. This one solemn, that one joyous, all of them wet with tears. Except for Harry, they'll all go soon in these same shuttles. Perhaps Harry's ashes and mine will keep company someday. The destiny of Earthseed is to take root among the stars, after all, and not to be filled with preservative poisons boxed up at great expense, as is the revived fashion now, and buried uselessly in some cemetery. I know what I've done.
I have to warn you, though, the movement won't let you preach. They agree with St. Paul in that. Let the woman learn in silence with all all subjection. But I suffer not a woman to teach, nor to usurp authority over the man, but to be in silence. But don't worry, there's plenty of other more suitable work for women to do to serve the movement.
Beware, at war or at peace, more people die of unenlightened self-interest than any other disease.
And that is the sound circle. Thank you so much, everyone. I hope that you enjoyed that for those of you who are doing it for the first time. And if we could share the screen, Tommy. To the next slide. All right. So looking into the future. Our next book is Bloodchild and Other Stories. It was published in 1995. And Bloodchild and Other Stories is the only well, at the time, it was the only collection of science fiction stories and essays written by Octavia Butler. Each story and essay features an afterword, which the afterwords are my favorite part, because we get to hear her write about her writing. Bloodchild, the title of the story, won the Hugo Award and the Nebula Award. The expanded editions contain 2 additional stories, Amnesty and The Book of Martha. Fun fact, that is my favorite of all of her writing. If we can go to the next slide, on the live shows in September of 2025. So we are in the, excuse me, what did I say?
You said 2025.
And I stand by it. So here is our updated schedule. We are in the twilight of our slow read in the last lap. Today marks our 11th read, the end of our 11th show, which is incredible. We have 3 live shows left. Bloodchild on September 25th, on November 27th, Fledgling, and then on January 29th, Unexpected Stories, which right now I saw a version of it for $7.99 on Amazon. So if you
get out,
yeah, so it's an e-version.
Oh shoot, okay.
So just to let you know, we Eventbrite only allows us to have a certain number of events in a series, and we have reached the end of that, which is why no one is able to purchase tickets right now for the upcoming 3 shows. So we are going to be creating a new series on Eventbrite, and we will be sharing the links to Eventbrite and also on our social media. But we will definitely include a link to get tickets in our thank you email that we send out to everyone who got tickets for this show and everybody who's participated in the OEB slow read in the past. So you will get that, and then you can access tickets the way you did for this one. Let's go to the next slide, please. So I did not do a full set of reading sprints for this book, and I'm not sure if I'm going to be able to do another one for the next live show. So if you are interested in reading with other people or engaging on an app, I know there's Fable and Storygraph and a lot of different ways for people to read together. If you are interested in doing that and you create a kind of communal collective reading experience that you would like us to invite others to, please just let us know, and you can get in contact with us through Eventbrite or Instagram or anything like that, and we'll be happy to share that with the group. And also, if I do any reading sprints, obviously I'll put the schedule up for you. It's just hard to predict what'll be happening in September. So I anticipate it's going to be a busy time for me and for others. So if you can go to the next slide, please.
All right, and check your email after this, not directly after the end of this show, but we will be sending out a survey. And as Jerry said, there will also be a link available for you to register for the next 3 live shows. But we do want you to answer and complete the survey because we do use that feedback going forward. So please check out or check your email for that.
Mm-hmm.
And also, if you want to keep in touch with us between the live shows, there's always, like Jerry said, Eventbrite, where you will receive emails. If you register for the show, you will receive update emails from us, including you will get an email if and when Jerry does her sprints. You can also follow us on Instagram and Twitter at the Octavia E. Butler Slow Read, and on both platforms. And you can attend the slow reading sessions on Jerry's YouTube channel if those happen. There's great discussion that happens in between the reading sprints between Jerry and the chat.
And for those of you who are joining for the first time, all of our live shows are available on ONYX Pages. So, and there's a playlist, so you could, spend 48 hours watching them all, or watch them whenever you want. So if you're watching the replay, feel free to go back, and the reading sessions are all there as well. All right, so please indulge us in one more poll. Now, we did tell you at the beginning of the year that we were going to engage in a discussion about how we want to end. So for those of you who are in Zoom, please answer the question if you're interested in doing so, and then I'll read out the question so that if you are in the YouTube chat, you can also answer it as well. So the question is basically, how do we want to end this journey together? We started in September of 2022. We have now read 11 of the 14 books in our slow and luxurious reading of all of OEB's published works. This is the OEB Slow Read is the first of its kind ever in the world. Never before have we had an international group of people slowly reading all of Octavia E. Butler's works in near publication order. And this is a big deal for us. And so our question is, how would you like us to, how do you want to end this? We could do a separate live show where we talk about all of her books together. We could add an hour to the last live show, Unexpected Stories, to end our journey then. We could create a keepsake that people can purchase to remind them of the journey. And some of us might not be sure, but we should do something special. And we can just say bye after our last live show. It doesn't need to be something ceremonial. So please feel free to answer that question. We will continue to, choice 6. I don't know. That was a blip. Sorry about that, but somebody chose it, which is great. So if you're on YouTube and you're in the chat and you have ideas about how you'd like to end, it will be, our last show is going to be January of 2023. So please share your thoughts and we will capture the results of this poll, and also we'll continue asking this question as we move forward, because we want to make sure that we end as powerfully as we began. Excuse me. Okay.
All right, and if you are not ready to leave yet, for those of us who are participating in the Zoom session, you may stay on. We will have a brief lounge, maybe 10 to 15 minutes afterwards, where we can just have looser conversation. Those of you who are on YouTube, we do thank you for your participation and being active in chat. Chat was very active today, and I greatly appreciate that. So yeah, just stay put if you would like to stay put on Zoom. If you would like to stay for the lounge afterwards, for those of you who are joining us on YouTube, we will be leaving you shortly.
And a shout out to Tomi, who joined us as our digital alchemist today, operating the slides. Thank you very much, Babe, she's like literally right there, for helping us today and being a part of this. And thank you all for coming. Thank you to those of you who are on YouTube. We really appreciate you being there and being a part of the experience. Regina Renee, I see you. So thank you very much. All right, we are going to end the live stream on YouTube now. And as Tati said, we will stay in the lounge for about 10 to 15 minutes. So bye everyone who is watching on the replay and for those who engage with us on YouTube. See you
so much.
September.